Hello, and welcome to the first video in the Learn Microsoft BI series. This first video is simply entitled, What is Business Intelligence? And in it, you'll get a very high-level overview of what a BI solution is all about and why a company might undertake it. Now, unlike most future videos, this first one is just all slides and some disconnected voice talking. Future videos will consist mostly of demonstrations of the Microsoft tools. But this first one is just very generic and discusses just what is business intelligence all about. So the first thing to do is look at the problem that exists, and companies use business intelligence to try to solve this particular problem. And that problem is that most companies actually have a lot of data. In fact, a study back around 2000 showed that most companies are doubling the amount of storage they have every 12 to 18 months. So companies have a wealth of data stored in various places. But the problem is, well, one of the problems is it may not be the right data. So for example, I've worked with a number of companies that decide to track a particular metric about the organization only to discover that they're not currently collecting any data that would allow them to look at that information. So while they have a lot of data, they may not be storing the right information. And more commonly, you hear a phrase in the IT world that says, well, data is not information. This is very true. Data by itself is fairly meaningless. You have to put it into context and make it in some format that is easy to understand and easy to grasp. And so we'll talk a lot about that throughout these videos, because that is one of the absolute key elements of a BI solution. In addition, companies usually have data spread across all kinds of different systems. They'll go out at some point and they'll buy a human resources system. They'll buy a financial system. They'll buy a manufacturing system. They'll buy these various systems from different vendors, and they may run on different operating systems. They may have different database engines that run them. And this means that the data is spread out all over the place in very different formats. So for example, the HR system and the financial systems probably both have employees stored, but it may be in completely different formats. So companies have all of this data spread out all over the place. It's hard to bring it together to make it consistent and then turn it into some kind of actionable format, something that's easy to grasp and make decisions on. So what is business intelligence? Well, first of all, business intelligence is a process. It is not a product that you buy and install and you're done and suddenly have business intelligence. But it is an actual process that aims to take all of this data and bring it together and allow users to make better decisions faster. That's really what it's all about, is I somehow want to take the organization's data, bring it together and make it actionable, make it easy to understand, and make it useful so that I can use it to drive better business decisions. Now, the first part of this often involves now taking this data from all of these various areas in the organization and bringing it together into some consolidated and consistent format. We'll talk a whole lot about that, and you'll see several videos that talk about this whole process of consolidating this information and making sure that it is consistent. This process, this part of the process, is really kind of the data warehousing process, which I'll talk about in just a moment. After it's brought together and put in a format that is useful, what we'll do is now put some front-end tools onto it that make it easy for users to access and work with this data. And that's really what brings the value home to the organization. Now, sometimes these are referred to generically as decision support systems. A much older term that really isn't used much anymore is the old executive information system. But really, that's what we're talking about. Those same two concepts are really now all rolled up into a generic area called business intelligence. So I mentioned in the previous slide the term data warehousing. And data warehousing is actually part of a business intelligence process. Now, BI is really just an extension of the whole data warehousing piece. Data warehousing is this process of taking data from one or more sources and somehow bringing it together into a single, consolidated, and consistent format. Now, there are a lot of technical terms that I could throw out here, talk about star schemas or snowflake schemas and cubes and dimensions and facts and so forth, but basically you can just imagine that I have all this data spread out all over the place. I just want to bring it together and have it all in the same format so that I can work with it. And not just have it in the same format, but I want it in a format that makes it easy for me to explore, makes it easy for users across the organization to look at the data, to understand it, to work with it, manipulate it how they need to, and so forth. So that's kind of the data warehousing part, is bringing it together. And then again, I'll put these great front-end tools onto it that allow users to do this exploration and very robust analysis. Now there is another area in this called data mining. Data mining is really kind of an extension onto the whole data warehousing concept, and technically you don't need a data warehouse to do data mining, but they usually go hand in hand. And data mining is simply using statistical algorithms to look at the data. And what you're trying to do in a lot of these cases is, for example, you're trying to find relationship between data elements that may not be intuitively obvious. I'll give you an example of one of those in just a moment. You might also be trying to find trends. For example, you may have introduced a new product that's cannibalizing one of your existing products, but it's hard to see that, but a statistical algorithm might be able to find that relationship much easier. You might also be doing what are called predictive analytics. You might be trying to predict future trends or future sales of a particular product. You might be trying to do things such as predict who will buy this new product based on the known universe of people who've bought similar products. You see this a lot of times in a very simple format. When you go online and are doing some shopping, it might say customers who bought this also bought these other items, or, well, if you like these particular items, may we recommend this other set over here. A real-world example of where data mining was used that's often cited is the beer and diapers story. A chain of stores, a convenience stores, discovered that with some data mining, a relationship between the sale of diapers and the sale of beer, which they thought was certainly strange. But in looking at it, basically what was happening in a lot of cases were that late at night, the baby would wake up crying, the wife would send the husband to the store to get some diapers because they were out, and while there, he would say, "Oh, what the heck," and he'd pick up some beer. So it actually led this store chain to place coupons on the diapers for discounts on beer and so forth. Very interesting use of data mining. Now, with business intelligence, there are a number of users that can benefit. In fact, really, probably anyone in the organization can benefit from data mining or business intelligence in one way or another. And in fact, it can spread beyond the organization to external people, customers or vendors of the organization can benefit from a BI solution. So you can see here a list, and I'll go over this in the next video and talk about the different users and actually show examples of solutions that these different users might be able to access in a BI solution. But executives and business decision makers, that's pretty obvious who those folks are. They're certainly upper level managers and executives. You have information workers that can include managers and non-managers who are still making decisions, and we'll talk a lot about those. Analysts are a special kind of information worker. They typically are very good at statistics, and they spend a lot of time doing deep analysis on the data. Line workers are those either you could think of on an assembly line or on the front lines dealing with customers every day, someone at a point of sale terminal or so forth. They may actually be using BI and not know it. It may simply be integrated as part of their daily applications. And finally, of course, external vendors and customers. You can open some of this data up using often web-based tools that allow people from outside the organization to see some of the information that they need in order to better serve you, or in order to look at their past orders and so forth. So these are all users who could benefit from a BI solution. And one of the interesting things about this is that they often need a totally different set of tools in order to work with the data. They just have different needs in how they need to consume this data. And a well-structured BI solution can have a variety of different tools accessing the same set of data at the same time. And that makes it a very robust and accessible solution. So what have you learned? Well, again, from a very high level, BI is a process. It's not a one-time deal. It's not a product you buy. It is a full-blown process. And typically companies start by trying to consolidate data and then present it in ways that users in the organization can look at it, understand it very quickly, and make informed decisions based on that information. And, as I just discussed, a single solution can actually deliver data to a whole host of users, both internal and external, using a wide variety of tools with different capabilities depending on their needs for working with the data. So with that, I'll get ready and make the next video in which you will see some of the different tools that are available to support these different users in a BI solution, and you'll start to see some of this power being used against an actual data warehouse.